So in this section, we're going to be learning all about chains in LangChainGo. Chains. Now, what are chains? Chains are basically how you build workflows in LangChain. Chains are how you construct AI-driven workflows in LangChain. So let's imagine you want to build a workflow for sending an email. Let's say we have a bunch of steps. So let's say step 1 receives the input and drafts the email. Then we have another step. Let's call it step 2, which is going to review the email and also attach sender details and receiver details. And then we have step 3, which would actually send the email. So we have these 3 steps in our email outbound workflow. So using a chain, we can actually tie these steps together. We can connect these steps and it will give us a workflow. It will give us a workflow. And this workflow is what is known as a chain. This is a chain. This is a chain in LangChain. A couple of steps working together to achieve a specific goal. So chains are basically your infrastructure in LangChain for building AI-driven workflows. Now, chains, unlike agents, are not autonomous. Agents are autonomous. They get to make their own decisions, but chains are predefined. They are predefined. You arrange the steps in the right order, in a predetermined order, the order you believe the steps are to be taken. You arrange them using a chain. So that is the main difference between a chain and an agent. If you want your AI system to be predetermined, if you want to follow a defined set of steps to reach a goal, use a chain. If you want your AI system to decide on its own what to do to find the best way to solve a problem, then use an agent. But we're going to be treating agents in the coming section. So back to chains. Now, how do chains work? So let's say we construct a chain. We have a chain, this email chain. We're still going to be using our email example. And we pass an input. So you have to pass an input to the very first step. This step expects, let's say, your email intent, the sender details, the recipient details, and all that. So you send an input to this step. It takes all that information and drafts the email. It drafts the email. Once it drafts the email, it will then send an output. So each step has an input and an output. So it takes your input, which is all the information required for it to draft the email. It drafts the email and sends the drafted email to this step, to this review step. Then this review step takes the drafted email, checks it for spelling error, checks it for tone, and makes sure that the intent is correctly reflected in the email. And once it's done, it sends the final draft to this node that sends out the email. It sends the final draft to this node, and this node is going to pick that final draft and send it using a service like SendGrid or whatever email service you're using. So that's how chains work. Just a sequence of steps, and the output of one step is going to be the input of the next step. The output of one step becomes the input of the next step. So you have to make sure that whatever data format or type or structure that a preceding node is producing is what is expected by the next node. This is very, very important. You can't be expecting a string here and you send a map from here. That is not going to work. You can't be expecting a slice here and then you send a string. That is not going to work. So you are in total control of this process, so you make sure that you're sending the right data across your steps. So chains can be made up of as many steps as possible, and later on we're also going to see that you can actually build small chains and combine them together to form a more complex chain. And this is going to lead us to our next discussion, where we're going to be talking about different types of chain. Different types of chains in LangChainGo. Now, the very first type of chain in LangChainGo is called the LLM chain. LLM chain. Now, this is the simplest type of chain in LangChainGo. And it simply combines, the LLM chain simply combines a prompt and an LLM. So we have a prompt and an LLM. A prompt and an LLM. It's more of a component chain. It just combines 2 components. And like I said, this is the simplest type of chain in LangChainGo. You have a prompt template, you feed in your variables, into your prompt template, it produces a standard prompt, passes it to a model, and the model generates an output. That's simple. That's simple. So this is the smallest unit of a chain in LangChain. And just as that single unit, you can define multiple of them and use them for specific purposes. You can define multiple of them and use them for specific purposes, build different prompt templates for each one. And sometimes you can even use a different model. For example, if this chain is supposed to generate a blog post, you want to use something like a thinking model. So you want to use a model that is very powerful, can do research, and can write well. But if you want to do simple tasks like calling tools and stuff like that, you may just use a smaller model here that is fast and efficient and even probably less expensive. So that's the benefit of LLM chains. You can compose a prompt with its perfect model. Simple as that. Now, the use cases of this LLM chain includes things like question answering. You just want a system that will answer questions. Some template-based text generation. You want to do text translation, language translation, or you just want to draft emails or draft social media posts. Yeah, these are perfect use cases for using an LLM chain. Now, the next type of chain we're going to be looking at is what is called the sequential chain. Sequential chain. Now, this is where you actually build workflows. And in a sequential chain, you simply build simple chains, LLM chains, then you connect them. Yeah, you connect them. You build LLM chains for specific purposes and you connect them together into a workflow. So this is where you're actually using chains for building predetermined workflows, AI-powered, LLM-driven workflows. So that's basically what a sequential chain does. So let's imagine a scenario whereby you want to publish an article. So you build 3 different chains. One chain is going to write the article. Another chain is going to edit the article. And the next chain is going to use a tool to post the article to, let's say, Medium, Dev.to, or any of your favorite blogs. So you build these small chains, the writer chain, the editor chain, and the publisher chain. Then you connect them together using LangChainGo's sequential chain. And then you have a workflow, straightforward workflow. Now you have to make sure that the output of one chain is the expected input of the next chain. Very, very important. Just as we described here, that the output of one step has to be the expected input of the next step. So the output of the writer chain has to be something that the editor chain can work on, and the output of the editor chain has to be what the publisher chain can publish. For example, the editor chain can spit out Markdown. If we're expected to post to a blog that uses Markdown or a CMS like Sanity, you just make sure that you are producing Markdown, you're not producing PDFs, you're not producing XML, you're producing Markdown, so that this publisher LLM chain can then use a tool to fire it into Medium or a Notion document or any destination that you would like to post your blog. Now, common use cases for this type of chain include, like we talked about, a blog generator, where you have an outline, draft, and SEO optimization steps. That's another type of chain. You draft an outline, you have a draft of the article, then you do SEO optimization. You can define as many steps as possible. You can define as many steps as possible in your workflow. As many steps are required in your workflow. Also, coding tools where you generate code in one step, you add comments in another step. You can also format, lint, or whatever in the next step, or test, and then you can also push to a repository. So coding tools. You also have generation of marketing copy, which is similar to the blog posts or article generation and posting that we described earlier, where you generate an article. You can also have a step that does, let's say, like an A/B test, and also a final step that optimizes your article before it then posts it to the required destination. So yeah, that's a sequential chain. The next chain we're going to be looking at is what is called the conversational chain. Conversational chain. Now, from its name, you may have guessed, these are chains that can maintain a conversation history. Yeah, they can maintain a conversation history. They can maintain a conversation with your system. They can maintain a conversation with your user. These chains can be run multiple times, and they're going to remember every single thing that has been discussed. So let's just look at the makeup of this type of chain. Now, these chains basically just have an LLM, and another secret ingredient. And that other secret ingredient is a memory model. They have a memory model. So if they have an LLM and a memory model. Now, with these two, anytime you send information, anytime you converse with this chain, it would process it with the LLM, of course, give you a response, but it would then take both the response and the message you sent that generated the response and save it in memory. So that when you ask your next question, it is going to pull from that memory and use it as context. Like I described in a previous video, LLMs are stateless. They don't remember the last thing you spoke to them about. They can't remember. But with a conversational chain, you can build something that can function like a chatbot. And anytime you converse with it, if you tell it your name and later on in the conversation you say something about your name, it's going to remember your name. It's going to remember everything that you guys have discussed, and it will be able to answer you accordingly using the memory as context. Now, these are great for building chatbots and virtual assistants. You already know that that's where we're going. They are great for building chatbots and virtual assistants. You can also build things like customer support systems. They are also awesome for conversational tutors. Yeah, you can build conversational tutors with this. You can also build your own AI-powered version of Duolingo with this, even though from what the market is saying, I don't think people really like that for Duolingo. You can also build things like e-commerce shopping assistants. You can build interactive storytelling games. I saw one that was built recently and I really loved it, and I'm hoping to replicate something like that. So yeah, with a conversational chain, you would always get responses from the model that take into account your context, so you can have a full conversation with your chain. Now, in this section, we're going to be creating each type of chain, and we're going to be starting in the next video by creating a simple LLM chain.